this is going to be very controversial. I I can't tell anyone to do anything other than a medical doctor would tell them to do in this situation without knowing the kind of stuff that I have between their ears. And yet, I just was on the beach with some little kids, decided to change the conversation, make it friendly for them. And on my way back up, I was looking for an adult. This older guy, man, just had the vibe of medical science, is retired medical doctor. He said if I'd come to him and show him that, he'd actually send me right to the ER. I asked him why and what are they going to do, and he said, well, they're going to start with antibiotics. I asked him if he'd ever heard about butyric acid, and he didn't know what it was. It's actually the God particle for the friendly flora. I'm on that. And I said, you know, the antibiotics, they're not very selective. They'll also wipe out the friendly flora. You do enough of that, then the remaining harmful go rampant, end up septic. And that kills people. And, you know, there's no statistics for how many people they kill who go septic from antibiotics. Zero. I've never seen it. I've looked and looked and looked. My father ended up doing that for years. He said that if they ever get him in a hospital, they would kill him. You know, a lot of natural doctors have gone to hospitals for routine checkups and not come out alive. There's been, anyway, stuff's been going on for years. I watched what happened to my own father, and he didn't have a major problem with his system. They screwed him up. He was dealing, that's another story. Well, let's just stick to this brown recluse bite. And all the research I see on the internet says when it even gets close to what I was experiencing within a few days, run to the hospital. I'm on my 12th day. So the 11th night, it finally started to drain. And last night, it basically stopped, especially by this morning. It was clear fluid coming out finally, which means it's pretty clean, because all the white from pus is actually a bunch of dead cells, white blood cells and lymphocytes that sacrifice themselves for me and for you. That's what their job is to do. So obviously my body produced whatever antivenom antibodies that it needed to solve the problem so far. And my friendly flora, you know, without their presence, also the white blood cells and lymphocytes can't even identify friend from foe. So that's just another way that people end up going septic, is if those are all of a sudden missing out of the equation. And most medical doctors, really, be honest with you, those especially in private practice, most of those are pretty freaking clueless. And this guy, who even retired, I asked him a simple question. The last video you see with me talking to little kids, it's one thing if they're not being taught in school, right, about the lymphatic system, that we have more lymphatic vessels than blood vessels and more lymph than blood. But a medical doctor, he didn't even know anything about it. And I said, well, if you don't know about him, then you don't even have any idea what activates him. And I wasn't too hard on him, I don't think. But he tried pushing me in the beginning. And then I spoke a bit stronger, and he right away said, oh, you're kind of aggressive. I started showing myself in the conversation and knowing what to say and how to say it. And he started calling that a little bit aggressive. I wish he'd have just said yes to the few minutes of recording that conversation while he was waiting for his bus. I didn't need any more. That would have been a pretty big blow to the whole medical profession, but this is easy. You know, in 1966, the American Medical Association, you know, they basically decided to bury all the research on the lymphatic system. And within their own rules, they don't live by anybody's rules but their own. Within their own rules and the fine print, if any medical doctor is involved with another organization that's not technically one of theirs, a pure medical society or organization, they can no longer publish any of the research involved with that research in any of their respected journals, right? Like like the American Heart Association Journal or Circulation, the peer-reviewed journals that are the popular ones. So peer-reviewed's been the gold standard of medicine for a long time. I think there's a new standard. I talk about that in some other videos. But anyway, yeah, I love science, and one truth doesn't replace another. They all line up perfectly and empower each other. It's knowing what to use, when to use it. My father, I'm so blessed to have him. Though he was probably the greatest cellular physiologist that ever lived. There was a guy named Hyman Samuel Merson, who was a lymphologist, and this was before they decided to bury all the research on the lymphatics. He was the one that was publishing the most in medical journals. He even published in Circulation, the American Heart Association journal, that we don't even have a positive pressure in the blood vessels without the subpressure lymphatic vessels. Yeah, we got more of them than blood vessels, more lymph than blood. They're a one-way circulatory system, unlike the blood vessels, which are two ways. And they're a subpressure set of vessels, unlike the bloodstream, which is more positive. And hey, they are what's responsible to retrieve the whole content of albumin. Basically is lost from the blood every 24 hours. The lymphatic vessels are responsible to retrieve that albumin back to the bloodstream so that we don't lose positive pressure. Otherwise we would, and we would all bleed to death in a matter of hours. Anything that could cause death that fast, you think it'd be important enough to start teaching people in school? In fact, number one cause of death for soldiers in war is hypoalbuminemia, meaning low albumin in the blood. From whatever wounds they got, most of which they've documented, they're not lethal. But it was the thought process, seeing blood, their life force, leave their body, and the fear that dilates the capillaries even more than the histamine and bradykinin from the trauma itself. The fear further dilates those capillaries, and it can dilate them so much that people could be dead even much faster. Much faster. So number one cause of death for soldiers in war, and how many of our military that we love to honor so much, and for the helping keep the peace that we enjoy, how many of them are told how to prevent that by the military, by the government? Zero. But there has been a group my father initiated. I have a top student, and I'm carrying that torch forward. So ironically, I've been rather, it's quite a paradox for me to be shouting out this kind of information, for this to be available, and yet it hasn't gone viral. What the crap's going on? And I know I'm not the best marketer on the planet. That's kind of a paradox, okay, that I haven't really been totally focused on the marketing. I admit, I've been just focused on developing I've never stopped developing spiritual and otherwise natural healing abilities. This has unlocked a whole new level. Forget about who I was before. I got a whole add-on download that just happened this morning, and there have been several along the way through this, and it's kind of how it was for my father. Every morning he'd be like, this is the new information. So anyway, that may be the purpose of every bummer has an even bigger woohoo if you just lean into it. And how can it be? That's a magic question. Just knowing that it is that way and asking how can it be. Even if you have no idea, if it seems impossible, ask the question anyway. Anyway, this medical doctor had no clue, hadn't heard of the International Society of Lymphology. I recommended that he look further into it, into that American Medical Association rules, as well as the fine print within the International Society of Lymphology. They made it technically not a pure medical society, even though until my father came along, it was all medical doctors. But it's what they used to shut them up. Hyman Samuel Merson never published one more article in another medical journal since he became a member of that organization, and they targeted him first because he was the best. he was publishing the most in the medical journals. He'd published another article showing how even the kidneys work because of the lymphatics in the kidneys. We have more lymphatic vessels than blood vessels, more lymph than blood, and it's our purification system. It is our immune system, and most doctors don't even know about this. The fact is, we're mostly lymph. This is another thing I told the doctor. He had no clue that we were even mostly lymph. He agreed that we were mostly water, but didn't know that we were mostly lymph, that there was more lymph than blood and more lymph vessels than blood vessels. Anyway, here's another Facebook Live. If you like it, if you think everybody should know and figure out how to better activate those vessels, and you know, some schools are definitely better than others. What we're doing with what my father and I developed is way beyond manual lymph drainage. If you're thinking of lymphatic massage or manual lymph drainage, good luck. That wouldn't get you, you know, I would have still ended up in big trouble just doing that with what I've been dealing with. There are a lot of different systems in life. There's a lot of facets of regeneration. And, you know, manual lymph drainage is a very narrow focus. You know, just not, it's positive. I'm not saying it's bad. But what my father and I produce is just, well, light years beyond that. This is Dr. Ezra, and you guys have a beautiful day. Go ahead and sign it off now.